Hey guys, what's up? This is Diego here at Cinemageddon Reviews. So WandaVision is finally over. They just dropped their last episode on Disney+, so now that we have the full picture of the entire show, let's talk about it. Now this is kind of a weird show to describe without spoiling anything, so I'll do my best, but bear with me here, alright? Okay, here goes. It's a sitcom starring Wanda Maximoff and her dead husband, the Vision. If you guys remember, the Vision died in Avengers Infinity War. But behind this show is something really dark and sinister and sad and actually really dangerous that could potentially destroy the world. And that's about as far in depth as I can go without spoiling anything. Now let me just start off by saying that WandaVision is a pretty ambitious concept for Marvel. Keep in mind that just 2 years ago, we saw Avengers Endgame, which was not only the highest grossing movie of all time, but the biggest crossover of all time in cinematic history. So to say that WandaVision is ambitious is saying a lot, because this is not only Marvel's first sitcom, but it's also setting up how things will be moving forward after all this Thanos craziness in the MCU. As far as quality though, I really enjoyed this show. One of the best parts about WandaVision was the fact that it was actually a weekly episodic release. People gripe a lot nowadays about how a lot of shows aren't really made for that type of release, the way that they're written. But in the case of WandaVision, the amount of twists that show had, and the reveals and the cliffhangers, kept you on the edge of your seat constantly, and at times even made the episodes feel really short. There's actually a meme going around nowadays that the words "please stand by" are now officially the biggest villain in the MCU. And in a way that's true, because at times you would almost get frustrated when an episode would end on a big cliffhanger. So hats off to the writers for keeping us invested every episode and giving us just enough to feel like we learned something new, but also keeping us in suspense for what was going to happen next week. The production design and the costume design are also standouts on this show. One of the more fun aspects of WandaVision was the fact that every episode takes place in a different time period, starting from the 1950s to the 60s to the 70s to the 80s and 90s, the 2000s, and modern times. And it was fun to see how everything changed from one episode to the next. My favorite episode to watch personally was episode 6. But this show would be nothing without its two central performances. Paul Bettany is freaking great on this show. He's really funny here, especially in episode 2. But as the show goes along, and if certain things are revealed to him, he gets to show just how intense he can get with his performance. Kathryn Hahn is also amazing here as the character of Agnes. She has so much charisma, and I really hope that we get to see a lot more of her in the future. Her character was actually one of the best parts of this whole show. But by far the best performance in WandaVision is actually from Elizabeth Olsen. She delivers such an emotional performance here. There's so much weight behind her character given her past and the things that came before in previous movies. And as the show explores how things led to where they are now, she seems to get way more intense with her performance. It's almost hard to watch at certain points because you just feel so bad for her character. This is probably Elizabeth Olsen's best work to date. I think this is worthy of an award or two. Now that being said, WandaVision isn't a perfect show. I think the biggest thing holding it back is really the occasional clashing of tones between episodes. Episode 8, for example, as good as that episode is from beginning to end, kind of feels like a betrayal of tone when you watch the show as a binge. Another thing was, there are certain aspects of how the show wraps up that were kind of disappointing. If you've been paying attention to Marvel and their upcoming projects over the last 5 years or so, you can tell that they were trying to set up something really big that fans have been wanting for a really long time. And then by the end of the last episode, it kind of just fizzles away, and it's almost like a retcon, which is disappointing and also kind of a weird choice because the show focuses quite a bit on that one thing. Also, the comedy in terms of the sitcom aspect of the show doesn't always work. I think the weakest episode in terms of the humor is actually episode 7. It just felt extremely hammy, and the way that it was written almost took away from the acting. It's not necessarily the acting or the writing per se, so much as the casting. There are just certain actors that, as hard as they may try, just aren't really meant to pull off that type of humor. In the end, guys, I think WandaVision was well worth the watch. If you have Disney Plus, I think you should definitely check it out. It's a lot more than what it looks like on the surface, and for many folks, it didn't really start to reel them in until the end of episode 3. I'd say that if you're not hooked by the end of episode 4, then this show is probably not for you. But if for nothing else, just watch it so that you can get a glimpse at what's to come in the future of the MCU. So with that said, my rating for WandaVision is 8 out of 10. So those are my thoughts on WandaVision. If you've already seen the show, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are, and how do you think that this is going to affect the MCU going forward? As always, guys, be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, all that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Diego for Cinemageddon Reviews, and I'll see you on the Wasteland.